Good morning, all. As we enter into this service, please note that you have been muted by our host. Please be advised that this service is being recorded and, with the exception of joys and concerns, will be published online. Finally, if you wish, take a moment to arrange your own chalice at home. It is not by chance that you arrived here today. You have been looking for something larger than yourself. Inside of you, there is a yearning, a calling, a hope for more, a desire for a place of belonging and caring. And so you begin seeking a beloved community, a people that does not put fences around love, a community that holds its arms open to the possibilities of love, a heart home to nourish your soul and share your gifts. Welcome home. Welcome to worship. Those words by Kimberly Ann Carlson. I invite you to light your own chalice and place it where it can be seen by all of us. We gather this hour as people of faith with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope as a sign of our quest for truth and meaning in the celebration of the life we share together. Before we sing the first hymn, let me remind you to leave yourselves muted. However, we want you and whoever is with you to sing with Jan as big and loud as you like. Make it a joyous experience. It's not there. Let's all sing the opening hymn, When We Are Gathered, number 359.
When we are gathered for a time of worship and of song, let none forget the joys and griefs that mark each path of life, and thus we reach for those who love. We reach for those who love. For youth shall pass and time is wise, and countless seasons turn. So day by day our years increase, until that last by life released, our spirits shine like stars. Our spirits shine like stars.
Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist community of Cambria. We are glad you have joined us today. As a Unitarian Universalist community, we celebrate religious diversity and welcome all who journey in search of faith and spirituality. The UUCC is a lay-led congregation run by the democratic process. We invite speakers from different religious traditions and spiritual or scientific backgrounds to speak at our pulpit. We encourage presentations covering a variety of topics and areas of interest to our community that connect with the UU 7 principles. Today's service centers around the third principle. We affirm and promote acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations. Spiritual growth isn't about a vertical ascent to heaven, but about growth in every dimension at once. It's spirituality in 3D. Growth in spirit doesn't measure one's proximity to God above, but rather the spaciousness of one's own soul, its volume, its capacity, its size. We need souls that can take in the world in all its complexity and diversity, yet still maintain our integrity. And we need souls that can love and be in relationship with all of this complexity. Instead of fight or flight, we need a spiritual posture of embrace. My name is Janet Cooper, and I am your worship associate this morning. I would like to extend a special welcome to today's guests and visitors. We're glad you joined us this morning. If you're not on the mailing list, please visit the UUCC website at www.uuccambria.org so that we can keep you informed about all of our activities. And please check out What's Happening, a weekly e-blast sent to all members and friends. This is a great way to keep up with the latest news in this community. And a reminder, if you wish to see this or any past Zoom services again, recordings of these services can be found on the UUCC website and Facebook as well. The membership committee invites non-members to consider joining our community. Please contact Diane DeMarco or a person on the board if you're interested. Thank you. So again, good morning and welcome to everyone. The affirmation is both a recognition of the nature of this community as well as a promise we make and aspire to. Let us now recite the UUCC affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, and to help one another. We set aside this time for any short announcements that would be of interest to our UU community members and friends. Please keep your items short and to the point. For any items that need more explanation, please call or email the person after the service to be respectful of everyone's time. If you have an announcement, please raise your hand by clicking on the raise hand button in the reactions icon. When Andy calls your name, please unmute yourself, then speak.
So, does anyone have an announcement out there?
I do. I have an announcement. So tomorrow night, the UUCC Board of Trustees will be having its first in-person meeting at my house, 5 o'clock. So looking forward to actually seeing everyone outside of little boxes. Thank you.
Thank you, Treva. Janet, was that the announcement from your zone? Okay, Judy Butler, please unmute yourself.
Good morning. Just a reminder, June 11th, 8 a.m., my driveway, church garage sale again. But I know you've got stuff to get rid of. I've got lots, so bring it on. Just have it here by 8 a.m. and then let's party in the driveway.
All right. So I have just a quick reminder that every Thursday morning, including this coming Thursday, the meditation group will meet right there at the sanctuary, wear masks, and come join us for a quiet meditative sit and a little bit of check-in discussion to follow Thursday morning at 10 a.m. at the sanctuary. Any other announcements? I don't see any, Janet, so back to you.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Next week, live from the Old Ship Church in Hingham, Massachusetts, Reverend Ken Reed Brown will return to our virtual pulpit to deliver a talk called Touchstones. Sharing together some of our personal and significant joys and concerns brings us closer as a faith community. We invite you to share the milestones that are deeply felt as a part of your personal life, along with expressions of gratitude or acknowledgement. But please be mindful and considerate of all who come to worship with us this morning. This is a time of community building. The collective flames of these candles embody all of the joys and sorrows which may have gone unspoken today, but are also deeply felt in this community. The first reading is an excerpt from the Unitarian Universalist Pocket Guide, 4th edition, by Kay Montgomery. I invented Unitarian Universalism all by myself. I know numerous other people who have done this as well. I did it on buses, traveling up and down Livernois Avenue in Detroit. I was 17 or so, a working class Irish Catholic, living with my parents and attending a Jesuit college about 10 miles away. The Jesuits would have been astonished, I suppose, to learn that this is what they had fashioned, a teenager trying to figure out what religion was and could be, and whether it was even possible to be both religious and honest, much less an actual member of an actual church. I thought not. Each day, that bus went within half a mile or so of a Unitarian church, but I didn't know that. And if I had known, it wouldn't have meant a thing. A decade later, in another city, long after I had left the church, I stumbled on a passage in a book that described Unitarian Universalism. I was astonished. This thing I had invented actually existed. A richer version than mine, a version with a religious, intellectual, and cultural tradition that I couldn't have imagined, but still identifiably mine. And then there was the experience so many of us have had of coming home, of showing up in this church and finding comfort and challenge and people who insisted that I grow, of finding ideas that thrilled and scared me because they demanded so much, of finding a community of scrappy, smart, satisfying people who cared passionately about the church, about Unitarian Universalism, and about leaving the planet a better place. People who believe that they need one another for religious and social reasons and for the work of making justice. Let us join in a time of meditation, of prayer and silence. Let us seek the quiet and the calm, laying aside our struggles, and in the silence, may there be a reverence in our hearts, a thankfulness within our spirit, and a deepened understanding of the meaning of our lives. Let us enter the stillness. May we find the compassion and empathy we need to strengthen relationships. May we find ways to love each other well. May we not judge or condemn, but rather build a beloved community. The second reading is an excerpt from the 18th Century History by Voltaire. Faith can no more be a belief, a persuasion, than it can be yellow or red. It can be nothing but the annihilation of reason, a silence of adoration at the contemplation of things absolutely incomprehensible. Thus, speaking philosophically, no person believes the Trinity. No person believes that the same body can be in 1,000 places at once. And he who says, I believe these mysteries, will see beyond the possibility of a doubt, if he reflects for a moment on what passes in his mind, that these words mean no more than I respect these mysteries. I submit myself to those who announce them. For they agree with me that my reason or their own reason believe them not. But it is clear that if my reason is not persuaded, I am not persuaded. I and my reason cannot possibly be two different things. It is an absolute contradiction that I should receive that as true, which my understanding rejects as false. Faith, therefore, is nothing but submissiveness or deferential incredulity. Oh, for heaven's sake. Somebody know how to say that word. Incredulity. Oh, well, never mind. Incredible. Today, Andy Feigin will lead us in a congregational circle called Faith, Flowers, and Spiritual Nomads. Andy.
Thanks, Janet.
Thanks.
So Randy, I guess you can unshare the screen and we'll be able to, our tiles will get bigger, including the one that's labeled questions for discussion, which oddly enough also has a gender identity. That's just something I couldn't get rid of. I know they're tiny. I'll read them. I'll read the questions for discussion in a moment. But first, a little prelude. First, a concern that I'm thinking. I feel bad that a couple of people maybe didn't get the email notification and showed up at the sanctuary this morning after we had decided to make this an all Zoom service, and thinking maybe we should develop a phone chain or whatever you call that to make sure everybody who might not see their emails get notifications of last minute decisions like that. So my concern to go, I believe Margaret came down to the sanctuary and had to go home. So sorry, Margaret. The idea of this congregational circle, which the worship committee has decided to include every so often, every couple of months. And now we've had a couple since we decided that. Originally, the idea was that we would discuss the issues coming up at this year's General Assembly. Back in the fall, when Robert and I discussed the 2021 GA, one of the feedback we got was that the congregation would like to take part in that debate before the GA takes place. Unfortunately, they haven't actually published this year's issues to be voted on. They're coming soon, but they haven't published them yet. So that made that topic not so appropriate. But also in the worship committee, in our review of the most recent services, I guess the March and April services, we were talking about how profound several of the topics had been and how we felt the need for further discussion. So the decision was to dedicate this congregational circle to several of those issues. And you may recall specifically, we're talking about the Stephen Lloyd Moffat service, the flower communion service that Jan and Mary led, and the Faith is the Elmer's Glue of Belief service that Randy presented. So the 5 questions that you see in tiny print on your screen cover those 5 topics, and hopefully they all interconnect. The first one is and by the way, if you want to get into advanced zooming, you can pin this screen, which will make it large on your screen. And then if you're tired of that, you can go back to your gallery view and see everybody. But if you'd like to pin that screen, you'll read these questions. And the first 2 pertain to Stephen Lloyd Moffat. What elements of world religions have you chosen to practice, and how do they work for you? And then the second question was sort of mine. Is it appropriation to pick and choose from multiple religions? Then regarding the flower communion, the question to consider is, can one look at the miracle that is a flower and still not believe in a higher power? And then addressing Randy Schwalbe's service, how do you define faith? And what role does faith play in your life? Those are the questions that I hope will stir some discussion. And the 2 readings addressed these topics to some degree. The first reading, in which the author stated that she invented Unitarian Universalism before she even knew what it was. This concept that you make it what you need it to be, what you want it to be. And then in her case, then she discovered, wow, there really is a religion that fits that description for me. And then the Voltaire reading, which is pretty dense. We got into it yesterday during rehearsal of this service. His take on what faith is. And he concludes, faith, therefore, is nothing but submissive or deferential incredulity. And I had to look up incredulity to make sure it's not only is it hard to say, but it's also hard to define. But basically, it means disbelief. And so he's saying faith is nothing but submissive or deferential disbelief in the many beliefs that religion purports to have. So, with that introduction, I open the floor to any of us who'd like to reflect on these questions. Please unmute yourself and I'll recognize you. First hand up, Jan.
Yeah, I think it's so funny that first reading because as we went through it yesterday, I said, "Oh my God, that's me." I mean, I used to sit in church and they'd be saying the prayers. This is the Catholic Mass, and I'd be like, "No, I don't say that part. No, 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 I don't say that part. No, 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 no. That I'll scratch that. Get rid of that." And then I finally, after years and years, and going through the Jewish religion also with my first husband, I thought there's got to be something out there. And as I've said before, when I moved here to Cambria, why I didn't discover Unitarian Universalism years and years and years ago, I have no idea. But I think it's okay to pick and choose. I know people who say, well, I'm not going to, if I can't follow the tenets of my religion, then I'm not going to reap all the rewards that it offers. And that's a crock. That's a crock. There's no big boogeyman up there who's going to punish you for believing what you don't want to believe. That's my opinion.
Thank you, Jan. Janet.
Thanks, Andy, and thanks for pronouncing that word. I even practiced it and I couldn't do it. Threw me. Yeah, my take on religion's always kind of been the most important element is the formation of smaller communities that people that support individuals and support groups. And and I'm kind of like Jan, I didn't know anything about Unitarian Universalism. I just thought there was no community that I was comfortable in. Because I couldn't buy into most organized religion's basic tenet that if you don't follow this brand of religion, you're somehow on the out with the supreme power. I couldn't buy into that. And actually, I just listened to Jasmine Daya Singh's sermon just last night, and he mentioned that about that he very early on did not believe that if there was a universal power, it rejected groups that didn't practice in exactly the right way. So yeah, that's kind of my background. I don't think, I mean, the elements of world religion we take out are elements that are pretty much universal as moral codes. So I don't see it's a problem because we don't really take the dogma away or I mean, we do base our services loosely on Christian services. But you know, we have flexibility, so I don't see it as appropriation, but more as just a sharing of moral code, which should be more widely shared. Anything else? I guess that's it. Yes, and flowers are miracles. The biggest miracles. They're so delicate and tiny, and yet they can survive, and that's kind of a very hopeful thing that the flowers come out every year. You'd think in this big hard world with everything coming down around you all the time that a flower couldn't possibly exist, but yeah, so they are a miracle. Thank you.
Randy's hand is up.
Yeah, I have to do my hand because my real hand because I'm running slides. Anyway, a brief comment about the flower communion. I had the pleasure of actually putting together the slideshow, and as I was doing this, I came up with a really nice bouquet of flowers that was looking really terrific, and that was great. And then I had a bouquet of people, and of course I got a little flack for putting all the people in the vase, so I put them in a nice hedge. But the idea that building up the people, just the analogy was very strong. And that is, here we can put together random flowers and you can almost not help to make a beautiful bouquet. And then here I was putting together a random group of people who, have different looks about them and so forth because of their ethnicity and gender and age and all those things. And it was becoming a beautiful bouquet. And I thought, well, this is really cool. That to me was the big message right there. So it's not just flowers that can look beautiful together, it's all these people. And just that diversity of all those people made for what I thought was a beautiful people bouquet. And coming from all these different countries, so forth, it was a special thing for me to put that together and get into it that way, because I couldn't be at the service, but I really appreciate that. Now I want to say one more thing about the Stephen Lloyd Moffat one, the first two questions, and that is, and I might sound like a broken record, but one of the things I feel very strongly about is our spiritual paths, and I really, really, really don't want to have somebody show me the path. I like finding my own path, but I like to be exposed to different things and so forth, just like those flowers and those people. And you know, so I want to find my own path, but with the rest of you. See, and this is what I love about this community, is that we get to walk, you know, our own paths, but together. And there's not somebody telling us you have to go down this road, and you have to believe that, and so forth. And I get that whenever I do an Easter service, and I see very strongly that you have to go with that person, go with that scripture, and there's no question. So to me, this is what I love, and the idea of putting together our own collection of thoughts and practices from other religions. Hey, cool, it's great. It's like cooking. So I'm really this is the right place for me and for Mary, and I think for all of you as well. Okay, I'm done for now.
Thank you, Randy. Kat, you're up next.
Yeah, thank you. Forgive me if this is not directly related to the questions. I like that, what you said, Randy, that, you know, well, okay, scratch that. I did like what you said. But I find it interesting that, you know, we've attracted so many different people and so many different people on different paths. We've had, you know, Wiccan speakers. We have Wiccans in our congregation. People have spoken on Judaism, Buddhism, so many different things. But I think it's interesting that we've never attracted somebody to be a member of our congregation that follows Jesus or do a sermon on Jesus. You know, I mean, is that like are we obviously nixing that? You know, because there's so many others that are within us, you know, so many other beliefs that are within us. Like Randy said, takes a whole bunch of people. We can do our own thing within the congregation, but nobody is representing Jesus so far, or Christianity in that way. The other thing I wanted to say is I'm a collector of religious art. I have a lot of religious art, Hindu, Buddha, Jesus, and Mary. And I've always hoped that it would connect me to the divine. You know, that's been my intention. I mean, I love it anyway, but it's been my intention that maybe somehow it will help me connect to the divine. You know, I've been seeing a shaman for the last few months, a couple times a month, and she has told me that you can be connected to the divine while you're doing the dishes, you know. So my art collection no longer means to me what it did, but I still love the beauty of the art. Thank you.
Thank you, Kat. I'm just going to reflect on that before I call on Lou, but it's so interesting. So often members of our community and my experience, other UU communities fled from Christian churches. And so for better or for worse, they have a negative attitude about Christianity, but I'm sure that all of the good stuff of Christianity that Jesus taught and that we've heard about would be, we UUs do accept it, but we could certainly spend more time talking about it. I think you know, maybe that observation is true, and it's time for some Jesus talk or some more. Anyway, some talk of what Jesus taught. I don't mean, I'm not being derogatory. That would be super valuable. Lou, your hand's been up. Please go ahead.
One thing I wanted to respond to, and Randy basically said the same thing, but when Jan said there's no boogeyman up there, I guess other religions call him something else, but that many people believe there is somebody up there who will punish them if they don't follow all the tenets of their religion. Oh, what was the other thing I was going to say? Oh, and I was sort of curious by the question, is it appropriate to pick and choose from multiple religions? And yet that, when you learn about the sources of UU, that's exactly what we've done. So it must be okay, or else we're in trouble. So thank you.
Thank you. Art, please unmute yourself.
Hi, am I on?
We can hear you.
Okay, great. And by the way, I have no idea how that picture of me got up there. A couple of things. Going back to what Kat said, I certainly would like to see more discussion, not only about Jesus, but all of the organized religions, not just those of kind of alternate theories. But, I think that Christianity, like Buddhism and everything else, plays a major part in how society works. And I think it would be very, very helpful for us to have discussions on days that celebrate those different religions. Going back to this idea of what is faith, I personally am an agnostic, which, as Randy mentioned a few lectures ago, actually means that we are looking for truth and meaning. We are not anti-God. We are actually open to see these things. The problem is with organized religions, I felt that they were really nothing more than ways of manipulating society. And certainly the hypocrisy, the contradictions, the false use of their principles have turned me off tremendously. So faith to me becomes more of a reliance and an interdependence of my friends and my community. One of the things I love so much about UUCC is that we're not a church, we're a community, and we rely upon each other. That to me is what God is. And I'd like to see us share more of that, to be very honest with you. A flower can be God, but God is also Mother Nature. And Mother Nature in and of itself is beautiful. That's really all I had to say. Thank you for having this discussion. And Janet, it's wonderful to see you back.
Thank you, Art.
You're welcome.
You touched on some really important stuff. I know that I came away from Randy's Faith is the Elmer's Glue of Belief with some heavy questions in my heart and mind. I really had to, I'm not sure I followed all of Randy's service, but I do know that it had an effect on me. And I meet once a month with a woman who calls herself a spiritual director. She's up in Berkeley. She's a former minister, a retired minister. And I find those meetings once a month really helpful. And I said to her, I kind of expressed my confusion and my questions about faith and belief. And we had a great conversation, which unfortunately, because I was in the conversation, I didn't take notes and I don't remember it all, but I do know I kind of came to this, that if you don't believe a credo, if you don't have a structure that, just to quote Randy, belief is Randy said in his sermon, belief is a structure, faith is action or element it takes to hold this structure together. That was from his sermon. And in talking about faith and what it meant to me, faith is a noun, but I actually said, for me, faith is more a verb. Faith is the action of the feelings that I have when I try and define what I feel. And that may sound like gibberish, but it helped me figure out that faith is a state that you are in, if you don't have the easy answers that some religions provide. Anyway, Treva's hand is up, and then Robert and Nancy. Treva, go ahead. Or the two cats. Is it the cats who have a comment?
No, I do, but I think Robert and Nancy actually had their hand up before
Oh,
me.
I apologize. Okay, please. They're
I'm getting waved off.
yeah.
No. I was like, go ahead, go
They
ahead.
yield. They yield to you, Treva. They
Okay.
yield the floor.
So I was raised in a house where we didn't really. I don't have any religious background at all. I was baptized Lutheran, really for my great grandmother before she died, but we didn't practice anything. And I had agreed to join the UUCC when I moved back to town. And it really wasn't until Randy did his talk on agnosticism for me to realize that that's exactly what I am, in terms of believing that there's something bigger and greater out there, not knowing what it is. So I think it's a almighty dude with a white beard and a white robe. No, I really don't know what I believe. All I know is that there's something larger out there. And so thank you, Randy, for that helped me figure out what I am in terms of or who I am. I don't know, all the above. So but that's when things kind of fell into place for me. And I don't think that taking from other taking facets of other beliefs is a negative thing. I always explain Unitarian Universalism as kind of a choose your own adventure or find your own path. And I think that finding bits and pieces from other faiths that are meaningful to you just kind of brings us all together. There's a commonality in everything that links us together as people, and I think that's a part of finding it. So I don't know if that made sense, but that's kind of what I think.
Thank you, Treva. Robert and Nancy, what do you think?
Well, I raised my hand first, but Robert now is going to say something too. So I have a really hard time saying what I believe, and so I'm just going to give you some basic random thoughts that. So I was kind of raised Catholic, and which just made me realize eventually I was absolutely not Catholic. It was like, oh, I'm Catholic, but I don't believe this. I don't believe that. I don't believe, fill in the blank, like any of it. So, but it was hard to not consider myself Catholic. I do, however, consider myself Christian, but I think most Christians would not consider me Christian because I don't believe that Jesus is any, part of God any more than you or I. I think Jesus was a teacher, like Gandhi was a teacher, like Martin Luther King. I mean, just a lot of a lot of teachers out there that have a lot of wisdom to share. And I think Jesus mostly was teaching radical love. And I think that's what Christianity should be about. And it's been horribly warped by, Constantinople trying to get, consolidate his power, and the Council of Nicaea or whatever, deciding what was, and it's just, so it's just a big mess. It's been warped by people in power to increase their power. But I was going to say the Fresno church did talk about Jesus, and I really thought there were a lot of interesting talks. I mean, again, they considered basically Jesus as a teacher, but one of the best ones was a former nun, who studied Aramaic and went back to the original meaning of the Our Lord's Prayer, which is not our Father art in heaven, who art in heaven. It is much more, oh, the great mother or the great spirit of the universe. It's just completely different than what is now considered the the Lord's Prayer. It was really, really interesting. It was to how what it originally meant and how it's been modified, radically changed. And another super interesting sermon was by a woman who studied religion, and she was, I think, a minister. And she gave a whole talk about Eve and what the story of Adam and Eve was, and how Eve sought knowledge. And I don't remember a whole lot about it anymore, but it was really interesting and completely different from what we think of Eve eating from the apple and oh yeah, and oh, what the snake meant. I mean, it was just a really, really interesting, totally different take. And I guess my point is that I think looking at Christianity and Christ, Jesus, whatever, can really open up some interesting windows of exploration. Not that you have to believe a big guy in the sky kind of thing, because I don't. But just throwing that out there. Yeah, I'm
Robert?
done. I can't read the questions. They're all too tiny.
Robert,
I
do you
just
want to
wanted to
continue
add-
or Robert?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I think it's appropriate that you adopt elements of various religions. I think that demonstrates a openness. And I think in the end, what's important is that you deal with your own mortality and you treat other people ethically and as you would have your own, as you would have yourself treated. One thing that has always puzzled me about religions is that it seems history is full of instances in which people have gone to war over the dogma of their religion and been willing to kill each other or conquer other lands. And for me, that's what shows me that adopting a rigid dogma is not the way to go.
I have something else to add, is that I also think, yeah, it's totally appropriate that we study other religions and the ideas of other religions. I mean, one of the first sermons that we went to in the UU Church in Fresno was about the 7 chakras. And it was like, that was really interesting. I mean, I had already heard some about them, but yeah, there's just so much. I think a lot of religions have some truths and some thoughts that are well worth exploring.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rebecca or Ted. I think it's Rebecca who has your hand up. And we're probably going to have that draw us to a conclusion. Go ahead, Rebecca.
Mine will not be long. I love what you said, Nancy. I think most of you know I came from the Congregationalist tradition in San Jose. And having been in this church for a few years, mostly I've heard the extreme right story of Christianity. And Christianity is too big to be one story. It is a spectrum that goes from some of the things that I really struggle with in the last 5, 6, 10, 20, 40 years to what I left, that I would have found a Congregational church down here, but I just didn't want to drive over the hill. And this was a very nice alternative. But mostly I've heard the extremist views of Christianity. And I would love to have us get more educated on what's called progressive Christianity in the last several generations, where I don't necessarily believe Jesus rose from the dead and flew up into the sky. I also don't go with a big white guy in a robe. I'm not sure I have any time for the Immaculate Conception, but there is a place, as Nancy said, that we can learn from, as well as get better educated today about parts of Christianity that you may not be as familiar with, especially if you didn't come from a more progressive, modern a view of Christianity, which could be parts of the Methodist Church, parts of the Presbyterian Church, virtually, not quite, but virtually all of the United Church of Christ. And that represents 10, 20, I don't know, UCC is 3.5 million alone. Not big, but mighty, and very connected to Unitarian. So I would really encourage us to learn more about the breadth and the spectrum, the continuum of Christianity that we may not really be well enough educated about to be saying this is Christianity, if you know what I mean. Hope that makes sense. Thanks.
Are we out of time?
It was the last.
Just about. Dolores, you raised your hand as our former president and a founding member. I'd love to have you share your thoughts.
Okay, great. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I just want to say, listening to everybody, this is like really great because that's the reason we put so much energy into creating a venue for this community, this community, so that your search and your path is your search and your path. I personally am an atheist and had a lot of religious training, but everybody likes to hear different things. And we're so lucky we get to provide that because we all came from organized religion, that one path, one way, that's it. And what we're learning about all this is that how to help each other and love each other in our congregation, start there, and we're able to spread that out to the world. So I'm so proud of everybody. Everybody wants to learn. Everybody wants to learn how to love better. Yahoo! Thank you.
Thank you. Anita, do you want to wrap it up? Do you have a short statement to make?
Yes, I just wanted to have the last word.
Okay.
I love the questions, I really do. And I hope we'll have the discussion again. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you, Anita. Yeah, Randy, I see at least one service coming up called Jesus Was a Teacher. I'm not sure who's going to preach it, but I'd love to hear it. Maybe it's more than one service. It's a series, isn't it? And then a few other topics that hopefully can come out of this discussion, which I thank you all so much for participating in it. We scratched the surface, but it's more than a scratch, and it's a wonderful that we can share this, and we'll continue to do it. No question about it, whether it's on Sundays or whether we want to bite the bullet and come up with a discussion time during our busy weeks. If there's enough people interested in it, I think that would be great. It doesn't have to be Sunday from 10 to 11. This deserves more time if we agree on when that time is, and I think it would be really fulfilling to all of us. So with that, back to you, Janet, for the remainder of the service. Thank you all.
Thank you, Andy. The morning offering will now be given and received. Please remember, we are a self-sustaining congregation and provide all financial resources for our many ministries. We recognize the spiritual value of generosity and invite you to participate. Also, please note that today is Fourth Sunday and we are collecting for Cambria's Anonymous Neighbors, also known as CAN. CAN offers services to local households in need of either food assistance, transportation, or medical supplies. Please use one of the methods shown on the screen for your offering this morning. Thank you.
The music today is We Are a Family, and I wrote this song, I want to say almost 30 years ago, for a show about Noah's Ark, and the animals sang this song. The lyrics are, we are a family, we belong to the world, we belong to each other, all brothers and sisters and mothers of life, fathers and sons and lovers of life. From the smallest to the tallest, the old and the young, the strong and the weak, on the plains, in the cities, the forests, and across the sea. It's the same air we all breathe, all brothers and sisters and mothers of life. We are a family.
I love that song. Let us now sing the doxology.
From all that dwell below the skies, let faith and hope with love arise. Let beauty, truth, and good be sung through every land by every tongue.
Please join us in singing the closing hymn, Immortal Love, number 10.
Immortal love forever full, forever flowing free, forever shared, forever whole, a never-ending sea. Our outward lips confess the name, all other names above, but love alone knows whence it came and comprehendeth love. The winds of love awake and blow, the mists of hate away. Sing out, O truth divine, and tell how wide and far we stray. The letter fails, the systems fall, and every symbol wanes. The Spirit overseeing all, eternal love remains.
Let us now recite the valediction. We extinguish the flame of this chalice, and we know that the light of truth and love and the warmth of this community go with us until we meet again. Please extinguish your chalice at home now. After the benediction, we encourage you to stay for questions and comments. Andy will call on you when you raise your hand. Andy?
Thank you, Janet. Our benediction today. Be ours a religion which, like sunshine, goes everywhere. Its temple, all space. Its shrine, the good heart. Its creed, all truth. Its ritual, works of love. Its profession of faith, divine living. And that's reading 683 from our hymn.